the land of the free. I don't see how. Count me in. Oh, America. Oh, America. Yeah. America. America. Sweet land of liberty, y'all. I'm doing this one for the struggle. And everybody doing, brother.
Peace and love, family. I'm Brandon Andrews, and doing my first bill. Just wanted to come speak with the family, Islam, to any of the brothers out there. And when I say Islam, that's I, self, law, and master. Not talking about religion, so I don't subscribe to any religion at this point in my life, and don't see or have any intentions of going back that path. Not that I knock anybody that do, but just for me, in this place of where I am right now, it's not for me. And you'll kind of see why when I get into this bill. So a few weeks ago, I posted a post about the 13th Amendment and whether or not it abolished slavery. And there's a couple questions that came up. One for me, when I looked up the term slave in the Black's Law Dictionary, which is a widely used law dictionary, and it alluded to, freed slaves becoming Roman citizens. So that was very confusing for me. Why would I be considered a Roman slave? I've never, or my ancestors rather, our ancestors, so weren't born in Rome, never been to Rome. So how is it that you become a Roman citizen? What transaction does that? What entity? What takes place from being a slave to being a free man, and you become a Roman citizen? Right, so that kind of don't make sense. If you go from being a slave to being a free man, it seems like you'll be a citizen of America, United States of America, however you want to twist it. And there's differences there, and that's something that we can build on at a later time. But not to go on too far, let's get into it. So before we jump into the Emancipation Proclamation, I felt it was necessary for everyone to understand what was in place prior to the Emancipation Proclamation. So the document, or the rules that were in place, were the Christian Black Codes of 1724. So I'll drop a link and you guys can go read the entire thing for yourself. But there was a few that stuck out to me that I wanted to point out in this particular bill that I thought were relevant to kind of tie all the pieces together. So Article 2 of the Christian Black Codes makes it imperative on masters to impart religious instructions to their slaves. Article 3 permits the exercise of the Roman Catholic Creed only. Right? That's important to remember and understand. So it permits the exercise of the Roman Catholic Creed only. Every other mode of worship is prohibited. So 1724 wasn't that long ago, and to me, what that sentence means, the Roman Catholic Creed only, whether you think you're Christian or or Baptist or Methodist or whatever, it all falls under the Roman Catholic, right? That's what that means to me. If you have a different interpretation, please leave your comments in the box, but that's what it means to me. So moving on, Article 4, Negroes placed under the direction or supervision of any other person other than a Catholic are liable to confiscation. So again, if someone had slave owner or slaves or was a slave owner that wasn't a Catholic, they can come through and confiscate your slaves if you wasn't a Catholic. So you better get your religion right. Right? Sundays and holidays are to be strictly observed. All Negroes found at work on these days are to be confiscated. And I don't mind taking my Sundays off. I've been doing it for a while, but you kind of understand and get to see from the documents how and why things are what they are today. So back in the day, if you was out doing anything on a Sunday, you get confiscated, finna pick you up, so a lot of people would take, that's a serious thing back in that time when you were fearful of your life and, you had a family you want to stick with and all these good things. So moving on down to Article 22, we declare that slaves can have no right to any kind of property, and that all that they acquire, either by their own industry or by the liberty of others or by any other means or title whatever, shall be the full property of their masters. And there's some more that comes behind it, but that particular piece was important because that took away black people, Moors, the indigenous, that took away your right to own property, right? Even if it was given to you, your master at that time still owns your property, whether you paid for it, given to you, whatever. You did not have the right to own property. Well, and I'm not going to say you, but black people, Moors, did not have the right to own property at that time. Okay, and going on down to Article 30. So masters, when 25 years old, shall have the power to manumit. I looked that up because, like I said, it's a lot of terms I don't know, and that's something you have to get in the habit of if you're going to start doing your own search, your own study. Is don't just skim by words. You can look at it and think you know what it means, but take the time, look it up. You'll be surprised. So manumit means to free, right? So once a master turned 25, he could free his slaves. And then this particular piece right here will be very important once you get into the actual Emancipation Proclamation. All right, so have the power to manumit their slaves, thither by testimony, depositions, or by acts inter vivos. But as there may be mercenary masters disposed to set up a price on the liberation of their slaves, and whereas slaves, with the view to acquire the necessary means to purchase their freedom, may be tempted to commit theft or deeds of plunder, no person, whatever may his rank and condition, shall be permitted to set free his slaves without obtaining from the superior council a decree of permission to that effect. So what that says is, okay, once a master turns 25 years of age, he has all the right to free his slaves. But you have to go to the superior council with, in writing, why you want to free this particular slave, because this slave might be ratchet, he might be wild, he might just go on a rampage, he might be stealing, loitering, killing people, whatever. All right, that, fearful of what a used to be slave, what he would do once he had his freedom. Would he take revenge? That was the thoughts, right? That's what I get from it anyway. All right, so to follow up, and then says, which permission shall be granted without cost when the motives for the setting free of said slaves, as specified in the petition of the master, shall appear legitimate to the tribal. So that's what I said. I got a little ahead of myself, but I read it a couple times. But so you had to get approval. It had to come through in writing, make sure it's legitimate, it makes sense. This guy isn't going to be of any harm. If so, he's not going to be free, right? And so the following piece is very important. All acts for the emancipation, right? This was in 1724. Emancipation. That's going to be a very important word since we're talking about the Emancipation Proclamation. So all acts for the emancipation of slaves, which for the future shall be made without this permission, shall be null. So what that sentence alone just said, if any form of emancipation happens without getting approval from the superior council, is null, does not matter. And the latter is very interesting, and all this will tie together when we get into the terms later on. All right, and following up, and the slaves so freed shall not be entitled to their freedom. They shall, on the contrary, continue to be held as slaves, but they shall be taken away from their former masters and confiscated for the benefit of the Indian Company. Who is the Indian Company, right? Who is the Indian Company? So I have my answer there, but I want to tie it back to some other stuff. Well, actually here. So I looked up the word confiscate in the law dictionary. So confiscate, to appropriate, parentheses, property as forfeited to the government. Definition 2, to seize property by authority of law. And that term is in Black's Law Dictionary, 10th edition, page 362. But what that clearly says, to appropriate property as forfeited to the government. Now, one thing that I want everyone to remember, and you have to do your own search on this just to verify for your own spirit, but we can't forget that in early days, in earlier time, it still stands today, is that the church was the government, right? The church was the government, and you'll be able to see this more as I get further into this bill. But the church was the government, right? So don't forget that. Keep that in mind, and go back and do your own search on the history of the church and what parts they played in the government and all that good stuff. So my answer that I came up with, once you look at appropriate, so I did not know myself what appropriate meant. So, okay, like I said, if you don't know what it means, go look it up. So I found appropriation. So appropriation, definition 1, the exercise of control over property, especially without permission, a taking of possession. CF, expropriation, misappropriation. Number 2, torts, an invasion of privacy whereby one person takes the name of likeness of another for commercial gain. Number 3, a legislative bodies or businesses act of setting aside a sum of money for a specific purpose. If the sum is earmarked for the precise or limited purpose, it is sometimes called a specific appropriation. The sum of money so voted, it was number 4, and then number 5 is where it got very interesting. So the 5th definition of appropriation is the transfer of a benefice together with all its interests or to a spiritual corporation. I'm going to read that again. The 5th definition, the 5th term of appropriation is the transfer of a benefice together with all its interests or to a spiritual corporation. See spiritual corporation under corporation. Then the 6th one, the benefice so transferred. Okay, so I did not know what a benefice was. So you guys kind of see how this goes. You have to look at the terms of the terms of the terms. It's a never ending thing. There's many layers to it. View your searching and your understanding of law and these different documents that we that currently govern our lives, that we sign on a day-to-day basis. The terms, you have to know the terms of the terms of the terms, because there's layers to it, and it was done that way so things are not easily identifiable, right? Excuse me. So a benefice. First definition is a feudal estate and land. A feudal estate and land held during the life of the tenant. See beneficium. Number 2, HIST, historical ecclesiastics law, an estate held by the Catholic Church in feudal tenure. C. Beneficium. Okay, I'm going to read that again. An estate held by the Catholic Church in feudal tenure. And this is right out of the law dictionary, guys. I'm not pulling this stuff from anywhere, so anybody can get a law dictionary and look it up. All right, next one, number 3, an ecclesiastical office endowed with special assets that provide a living to the office holder. The position and pay of a Christian priest who is in charge of a parish of preferment. Right? That's pretty clear. Number 4, the income provided to a priest by a bishopric or parish. So a benefice, that all leads back to the, and again, I'm not trying to steer anybody anyway. You know, for me, once I saw the information, it was like, wow, you know, because I was hearing all these brothers, you know, saying this stuff, and not saying that I disagreed one way or another, but it resonated different with my spirit when I had the chance to read it for myself and connect with my spirit, you know, to see it with my only eye, my third eye. So that made a big difference. So beneficium, go to that word, beneficium, again, Roman law, a privilege, remedy, or benefit granted by law, such as the beneficium absentee, whereby an heir could refuse to accept an inheritance. Now, I'm not going to read all of it, but a lot of it still ties back to the Catholic Church. And the biggest thing there is an heir could refuse to accept an inheritance. Pretty much, you're giving up your birthright. You're giving up your inheritance to land, right? So that was one definition of a benefice, and then there was a second one, a benefit or advantage, especially a privilege given by law rather than an agreement of the parties. Okay. And so let's go back to, and this, it takes a while to get through it. So appropriation, the other thing was, it said C, spiritual corporation. So if you go to spiritual corporation, all right, a corporation whose members are spiritual persons such as bishops, rectors, and abbots. So bishops are obviously head of Catholic Church, and you know, some Baptist church, which we just found out, you know, that it's all Catholic. Rectors and abbots. So one was the Mormons, and the other one was the monks. So these are for the high leaders in religious organizations. Right? And confiscation. So the first term, confiscate, was let's go back to it, to appropriate or as forfeited to the government. And then I saw confiscation right below it, and I found that to be interesting. And it says seizure of property for the public treasury. Seizure of property by actual or supposed authority. Right? And you know, if this all sounds like a business transaction, right? It really does, you know. So keep that in mind. So now that is a little overview of what was in the Black Christian codes, or the Christian Black codes of 1724, what was in place. And so now I want to lead into the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863. And the Emancipation Proclamation, you know, the first sentence of it says, you know, the Emancipation Proclamation granted freedom to the slaves in the Confederate States if the states did not return to the Union by January 1st, 1863. In addition, under this proclamation, freedom would only come to slaves if the Union won the war. And so it's important to understand what the term emancipation means and what the term proclamation means, and also some others, but those two are very, very important, right? So in Black's Law Dictionary, Emancipation Proclamation together clearly states an executive proclamation issued by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, declaring that all persons held in slavery in designated states and districts were freed. And again, that's Black's Law Dictionary, 10th edition, page 635. I forgot to give all the page numbers for the previous definitions, but look them up. I mean, they're there. All right. So when you break down emancipation by itself, so emancipation, first definition, the action by which one was under another's control, another's power and control is freed. Number two, a surrender and renunciation of the correlative rights and duties concerning the care, custody, and earnings of a child. The act by which a parent, historically a father, frees a child and gives the child the right to his or her own earnings. This act also frees the parent from all legal obligations between the parent and the child by operations of law. The third one, the enfranchisement of a son by his father, accomplished through the formality of an imaginary sale. Justinian substituted the simpler proceeding of manumission before a magistrate, also termed emancipation. Cf. Emancipation. So when you look at the term emancipation, that's where it really gets interesting. You know, like I say, you have to follow the breadcrumbs. If you just look at that and you stop, then you'll miss it, right? So if you look at emancipation, so now, and again, Roman law, first definition, a legal formality for transferring property by either an actual or simulated purchase. First definition of emancipation, Roman law, a legal formality for transferring property by either an actual or a simulated purchase, a formal conveyance in the guise of a sale. Right? So understand that you are black people, Moors, are humans, but on paper during that time, slaves, you were considered property of your masters. It's definitely set a legal formality for transferring property. So you see, there's been a few terms already. Confiscation, there was one where the government come in and seize or take your property. Slave, take your property. You were property. You were the property of the masters. The government took you, Moors, black people, African American, whatever you want to call yourself, whatever you subscribe to, which I suggest it not being a color anymore now that I'm learning what I'm learning, and I encourage you to do the same. But to my Moors, there's been a lot of terms in here thus far that is showing or indicating that there was a transfer of property. You know, all these terms talk about money and, you know, paying this person and paying that person. You know, so you were transferred from slave masters to the government. But let's keep going and let's get into it a little more. So a formal conveyance in the guise of a sale, right? A disguise. So it looks like a sale, The formality required the presence of the thing being conveyed and of 5 adult male citizens acting as witness. Another person held the bronze scales with which the purchase price had been weighed out. The buyer made an assertion of ownership, struck the scales with a piece of bronze or copper, then gave the metal piece to the seller as a symbolic prize. In Roman classical law, either the procedure or cessio in jure was necessary to pass legal title. This form of sale was abolished by Justinian. Second definition, a similar form used for making a will, adoption, emancipation of children, etc. Okay, so now let's look at the word transfer, right? So transfer is a verb, and it is to convey or remove from one place or one person to another, to pass or hand over from one to another, especially to change over possession or control. Second definition, to sell or give, right? And so let's go back to the first term of emancipation. Roman law, a legal formality for transferring property. Slave is property, right? For transferring, all right? Legal definition, straight out of law book. To convey or remove from one place or person to another. To pass or hand over from one to another, especially to change over possession or control. So the possession and the control of slaves was transferred from the masters to the government, right? I'm not making this up. You can look at it. Please look it up. Please look it up. Please look it up. Right? Okay. So convey, to transfer or deliver, such as a right or property to another by deed or other writing, especially to perform an act that is intended to create one or more property interests, regardless of whether the act is actually effective to create those interests. Right? So now you got to understand what property is, right? So I'm telling you that a slave was property, but collectively the rights in a valued resource such as land, chattel, or intangible. It is common to describe property as a bundle of rights. These rights include the right to possess and use, the right to exclude, and the right to transfer. Also termed bundle of rights. Second definition, any external thing over which the rights of the possession, the rights of possession, use, and enjoyment are exercised. Okay, so again, it's pretty straightforward. So when I read this, say land, okay, I know what that is, intangible, but I was like, what's chattel? Chattel. So I had to look that up. It's chattel. So chattel is a movable or transferable property, personal property, especially a physical object capable of manual delivery and not the subject matter of real property. See chattel security under security. Okay, so obviously you got to go see chattel security under security. So I go there, and chattel security is simply a security consisting of personal property. So this is personal property of slave masters, right? So then you have to look at the term of security. So collateral given or pledged to guarantee the fulfillment of an obligation, especially the assurance that a creditor will be repaid any money or credit extended to a debtor. See, satisfaction. And so I put that definition on that post, so I'm not going to get back into that one in this particular bill. So security continued, the second definition, someone who is bound by some type of guarantee. Third one, the quality, state, or condition of being secure from danger or attack, which, I mean, that doesn't apply in this particular situation. Number 4, an instrument that evidences the holder's ownership rights in a firm. Example is a stock. The holder's creditor relationship with the firm or government. A bond, or the holder's other rights. An option. A security indicates an interest based on an investment in a common enterprise rather than direct participation in the enterprise. Under an important statutory definition, a security is any interest or instrument relating to finances, including a note, stock, treasury, stock, bond, debenture, evidence of indebtedness, certificate of interest, or participation in a profit sharing agreement, collateral trust, certificate, pre-organization certificate, or subscription, transfer per share, investment contract, voting trust certificate, certificate of deposit for security, fractional, and it just keeps going on and on. So one thing you have to ask yourself is, what does all this have to do with freeing the slaves? Right? So we already pointed out that it was a transfer from the masters to the government. Now you're seeing term security, someone who was bound by a type of guarantee. Who was guaranteeing? So I'm asking, y'all give me y'all thoughts. So did the government come through? So obviously I know that the slave master didn't just want to give up their slaves. They got interest in them. That's how they make their money. That's how they coming up. That's who doing the building. That's who maintaining the fields. So I don't want to give my slaves to you, government. So did the government just come through and confiscate them? I'm taking your slaves whether you want me to or not. Right? Or was it a good, sound business transaction saying, okay, we'll give you our slaves, but you got to promise me some money on the back end, right? With these note stocks and treasury stocks and bonds. And that's another bill coming because, from my understanding, the birth certificate is tied to that. It gives permission for the government to set you up on the stock market as a T-bond. So I got to do some more search on that, and it'll be a following bill. But this is how all this stuff is tied together, right? So proclamation, the term proclamation, a formal public announcement made by the government. Announce, to make publicly known, to proclaim formally. So all this was a big ass announcement. Where did it go into law? Where did it become the law? Right? And so there's another thing that I had to ask myself, and we'll go back up to the Christian codes, where it was a requirement for anyone, regardless of their rank, to get permission from the Superior Council. So what I did was I read the entire Emancipation Proclamation. I read it, and then I also did a control find because I got it in a Word document, and I didn't see any indication, any verbiage whatsoever indicating that the U.S. government had got permission from the Superior Council to free the slaves. So since they didn't follow that protocol, confiscated. But confiscated who? The government. The government being the Catholic Church. Right? So I was going to get into a few more definitions, but I don't want this to go too long. So I will look up, advise everyone to look up in the law book the term grant to get an understanding of that and what that really means. Right, interest, franchise, And now slave, I put this back on here again, and again it's important because my question was, okay, what does this have to do with Rome? Well, how can a freed slave become a Roman citizen? And now it all ties back to it. Now, one important document that I kept hearing this term unum sanctum. It's like, okay, I heard that in another video, you know, somebody did a bill, and then I heard it again. I said, okay, well, let me go look up, you know, what unum sanctum is. And let me see, let me pull it up. Unum sanctum of 1302. So unum sanctum of 1302, this was drafted by Pope Boniface VIII, right? And so if you read that, there's two important sentences that that really stood out to me. And that was the first sentence and the last sentence. So the first sentence of the unum sanctum, okay, says, urged by faith, we are obliged to believe and to maintain that the church is one holy, Catholic, and also apostolic. We believe in her, being the church, firmly, and we confess with simplicity that outside of her there is neither salvation nor the remission of sins, as the spouse in the Canticles. So what that just said was, it was their belief that outside of the church, the Catholic Church, it ain't no salvation. It ain't cracking. It ain't no salvation. You can't be forgiven for your sins. If you ain't under the Catholic creed, it don't mean nothing. Right? So keep going. So one definition, I said, well, what does oblige mean? Looked up oblige. To bind by legal or moral duty. To bind by doing a favor or service. So that meant they felt it was their moral duty, and or to bind people legally, in believing that the church was the only holy, Catholic, and also apostolic way, that outside of the church there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Right? And I'm not doing this to beat up on the church, guys. I promise you, and I'll give you a little more about me and, you know, where I come from as I get towards the end of this. But let's move into the last sentence. It says, furthermore, we declare, we proclaim, we define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff. I'm gonna say that again if you didn't hear it. Furthermore, we declare, we proclaim, we define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff. Be subject to the Roman pontiff. So, okay. So we know what proclaim is. Define, that is to state or explain explicitly, to fix or establish limits or boundaries, to set forth the meaning of, right? And that's out of Black's Law Dictionary, page 515. And the interesting one, I was like, well, what is a pontiff? They want all human creatures to be subject to this Roman pontiff. Who is the pontiff? Pontiff, Roman law, a member of the council of priests in ancient Rome, also termed pontifex. Number 2, the leader of the Catholic Church, the Pope. See pontifex. Pontifex, Roman law, a member of the College of Pontiffs, one of several groups of priests who had control of religion in Rome. And guys, y'all can look this up. So there was documents, there was an agenda in place. There was an agenda, right? And so, looking at it, our ancestors got transferred from the masters to the government, and you can see as we dug into the terms, to the government, i.e. the Roman Catholic Church. So you property of them right there, paying the taxes, this, that, and the other, all that good stuff, and we'll dig into that. But not only that, you wanted the Roman Catholic Church. Put all your money in church, and I'll get into that too, because I mean I'm still learning, I'm still educating myself. But it's my understanding that per the 501(c), a portion of that has to go to back to Rome. Some of it may stay to help fix up the churches, maybe, but still some of it goes back to Rome, to the Pope, to the Queen. So, and again, I have to do my own search on it. That'll be another bill. You know, we'll get the 501(c). We'll read it. We'll go through it. We'll look at the terms and prove it out. But that's just, you know, what I've been seeing, you know, from other brothers that's done a build on it, right? So not only are you owned by the Catholic Church, you paying them to be in bondage, right? And so I'm not saying this to steer anybody from the church. It may come across like that, but it's about the facts. It's about the facts. You know, it's about the facts. That's it. You know, shout out to my brothers. You know, Frank Burrell. He always giving knowledge. Frank James, appreciate your brother Islam. Shout out to Islam Bay, Jermaine. Hey, facts over feelings, you know, is what that brother always say. And I mean, these are the facts. It's out of the law book. I didn't go to any fancy website, you know. Hold on, this is it. This is it right here. Black's Law Dictionary. That's where all that information came from. Go get you one. You know, so and again, you know, I'll give you a little bit about myself. You know, not knocking church. You know, at a certain point in my life, it was necessary for me. It worked at that time. You know, it got me through some rough times. You know, it gave me something to believe in. You know, but as you evolve as a person and raise your consciousness and become more aware, more spiritual. You know, you look inside yourself in lieu of waiting for someone to tell you something to make you feel better, or you know, just, and I don't want to get too deep on that, but I was there. You know, I used to pay my tithes faithfully, and you know, $250, $300 every time I got paid. You know, that's $500-$600 a month. You know, but I just want people to open your eye, your only eye, your third eye, and start doing your own search. You know, because I was blown when the night I read that, it literally hit my spirit like a brick. Because it was like, wow. You know, this ties back to the church. You know, so know and understand where we're at. And again, not trying to get anybody to go any other way. If it works for you, if you're okay, if you're comfortable, then hey, by all means. But if this bothers you, if it resonates with your spirit, I encourage you to do more searching for yourself, for your family, and start understanding law, start understanding who you are. And go from there, and we can learn together. You know, I know, looking at the law, that it's not set up in favor of black people. Calling yourself black, you have what's called colorable law, and when you refer to yourself as black or Negro, you fall up under the black Christian codes we were just looking at. And I plan to get more into that and do another bill, but understanding how things are viewed in the eyes of the law is very important. Very important. You know, because you look at all the rioting that's been done over civil rights, and I was going to go into that, but I mean, it wasn't any need, because at this point, through the Emancipation Proclamation, even, you know, 13th Amendment, you're still considered property. You know, even if you go to the 13th Amendment, Section 12, which the original 13th Amendment had 20 sections, and they blocked it down to 2. Why was that change? You know, I found the original 21, and again, that was on a previous post, but you know, one sentence that it specifically states is, the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens. So if you shall not be citizens, and this is the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, if you shall not be citizens, then the Civil Rights Act does not apply to you, because civil is for citizens. And by all means, family, if anybody has any additional documentation that we can help build upon it, you know, I'm not into, you know, I ain't here about the debating and going back and forth, but if you got some information that, you know, you want to bring forth to help clear up anything that, you know, in your eyes is inaccurate, bring it to me. Let's look at it, let's dialogue, and let's build on it together. You know, let's educate each other, because I don't know it all. I'll tell you that firsthand. I don't know it all. But at the same time, I'm going to do this search. I'm going to do the search for my family. Do the search for myself. Do the search for my brother. For my seeds. And really, I'm going to take me out, because it really ain't about me. It's about my kids. And their kids. And the community. And so that's why I'm putting this out here for everybody to see it, because I love the community. Right? And we need more brothers like that. You know, so everybody, you know, we got guys that, you know, want to go hard for your family. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. You know, instead of I ain't never been no shooter. I don't even own a gun. I ain't got into a lot of fights in my life. I ain't never been that dude. You know, I can hold my own, but I ain't never been that guy to go start no shit. Do it up here. Spiritual war, man. Spiritual. We've lost sight, and we've lost sight of we're prisoners of war. Our history has been suppressed. It's been misconstrued. And now we're in the age of Aquarius, and things are coming to light. So I ask that you prepare yourself. Prepare your families for the shift, the inevitable shift that's coming. So, thank you. I appreciate it. And drop your comments, drop your questions. We'll go from there. Let's grow in. Be more. Again, Islam to the fam. I self law and master. Know thyself to govern thyself. Love y'all.
A bigger crib and a home cooked meal. Here, single night, hell, feel what you going through. But I could have warned you when it's time to be a man. Do all you can, see other lands and don't be living for the other man. Take time out, set it in, be the better man, and close to watch your friends, and then you'll understand a little better then. But on the other hand, you so goddamn stubborn, and you be starting shit. And ever since you made president, we ain't even seen you since. You need to visit our schools, rebuild our church and home, and stop killing my own kind and leave my earth alone. And stop tapping my phone and searching my brain, and keep your personal feelings home when you bet on my phone. Do it for the weak and strong, and to each his own. Do it for the main goals when all the heat is gone.